I made over $1.5 million in real estate over the past 2 years, starting with zero experience. And of course, because of that, I have made a ton of mistakes. So in this video, I'm gonna break down the top mistakes that I made and show you what you can do to avoid them. And the first one is the worst one of them all, which is following the trend. What do I mean by that? Well, if you're new to real estate, then you probably don't know that real estate is all about the trends. And if I was to look back over the past couple years of my life, I can even list them out for you guys, right? When I was getting started, it was all about Airbnbs. And then it moved to creative finance, things like wraps. And now it's moved to things like co-living or RV parks or whatever it might be, right? And with each one of these fads, people are gonna come out and they're gonna pop up on ads and they're gonna make YouTube videos and be like, oh, this is the new strategy. This is how you're gonna do it. And you're gonna change this thing over and over and over. And I can tell you from the people I've seen go under doing Airbnb, the people that I've seen go under doing wraps, and the people that will eventually go under doing all of these new fads that are coming up, is that if you chase those fads, and you don't pay attention to the risk associated, you will not end up in a good position. But it's a trap, and it trapped me, and it's trapped so many other people, because when you're getting started, you're just looking to make that first dollar, right? And so somebody comes in, right? And let's say, for example, a great example of this was Airbnb arbitrage. Airbnb arbitrage is where somebody would go out and rent a long-term rental for, let's say, $2,000 a month. Then they would go furnish that rental, and they would take that furnishing and they would put the rental on Airbnb. They didn't even own the house, but they would put the rental on Airbnb and they would go rent it out. And let's say maybe they were paying $2,000, right, for their rent, but they're making $4,500, which means they're netting $2,500 a month. Now that's a very ideal scenario, but that's basically what that looked like, right? And so people are getting told, oh yeah, and by the way, a few years ago when I was getting started, this was all the rage. Everybody's, oh, Airbnb arbitrage, you can just rent out a property and make more money. And so everybody was doing that. And they were right. When they were getting started, they were making more money every month. But what happened? Well, let's think about a couple things. If you furnish a property with $60,000 worth of furniture, and then you have to move out of that rental, what do you do with the furniture? You can't sell it for $60,000, I can tell you that much, right? You guys see most furniture ends up on the side of the road. And so you're losing a ton of money on the furniture. What if Airbnb regulations come down, which they will? What if they decide to kick you out as the tenant because you don't even own the property? All of those different things start happening. And so what? If we look at a timeline for something like this, right? At the beginning, you start going up, 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 up. Because you're making money, you're feeling good, maybe you're acquiring more properties, and then all of a sudden you get kicked out of one of them, and then all of a sudden regulations drop, and then all of a sudden you end up way down here. But at the beginning, right, if you were to look at it from here over, it looks and feels really good. And that's a trap with so many things, and that's the first mistake that I made, was looking at stuff like this and thinking, oh, let me just think about the now, right? If I can make an extra $1,000 this month, that would be crazy. $5,000 this month, that would be insane. But what happens down the road? Well, the mistake that I made was not thinking about that and trying to follow the trends. I did this with multifamily real estate. I did this with single family real estate. I did this with wholesaling. And the biggest thing that I learned through that is that there will always be more trends that come out, because the people that are talking on YouTube and all these different things and selling stuff, they are chasing the trends to try and get you excited about something new. But I want to look at the old people. What about the people that have been doing this for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 50 years? What are they doing? Well, I've realized now that those people are just doing the same thing. They're buying property, they are trying to reduce their debt on that property, and they are renting it out long term. That's what's happening in the real estate space. And how do they afford to do that? They create some form of active income in the process, because we'll talk about later, rental properties are not necessarily going to do that for you. In fact, they're not going to do that for you. And so this was my first mistake, is following the trend. If you want to correct this, solution, what can you do? Pay attention to long-term strategies. If you're to look over the last 50 years, Airbnb has come and gone, or at least the ability to make a bunch of money with it. The different creative finance strategies have come and gone. Different things have gotten hot and gone cold. But what are the strategies that have worked long-term for people? If you can apply those strategies, and if you can simply look at this mistake that I made, and every decision you make, whether it's investing in real estate, how you invest your time, how you invest your money, if you can think not about, okay, how much is this gonna make me this week? but how is this going to affect me next year, 5 years, 10 years down the road? If you can think with that mindset, then you will avoid the first mistake that I made. That's what I try to do every day. It's never going to be perfect, but it's a huge mistake to make, to jump into that too soon. And so that's mistake number one, following the trend. Don't do it. Focus on the long term. Now, mistake number two, another doozy of a mistake that I've made that so many people make, is partnering too soon. Now, when you get into real estate, to be clear, it will suck if you are brand new and you don't have somebody to talk to, somebody to work with, somebody to rely on. If you're anything like me, right, I had no experience with this stuff. I didn't know what the heck was going on. I needed that from somebody. And if you don't know how to get started, you are naturally going to gravitate towards other people that are in the same position or similar position. But the mistake that gets made is that people partner, and I want to define for you what I mean by that, because people partner with each other when they really should just be working together. What's the difference? If I've got two people right here, person number one and person number two, there's a lot of different ways that these two people can work together. One way is a partnership, which is where they come together and form an LLC or some sort of a business. What does that do? Well, now these people are gonna have a shared bank account. They're gonna have to share with their tax filings. They're gonna have to share their expenses, share employees, all of this different stuff, right? Literally, like is in the name, it's like an actual partnership in life, getting married to somebody, right? Everything gets combined, everything works together. You are now tied to this person. And if you ever, for whatever reason, have to split up, again, just like a marriage, you got to figure out, well, what happens with the business? What happens with our clients? What happens with the money? What happens with the assets? All of these different things. Instead, you can simply have separate businesses like this, and then work together with what's called a JV, a joint venture. What does that mean? Well, a joint venture would outline your relationship together while having the money be separate. So for example, if you were to go out and wholesale a property and you were gonna make $10,000 wholesaling that property, you can literally just split that in two and make $5K each. And $5,000 goes here and $5,000 goes here. Now, that's separate bank accounts. At the end of the year, you're filing separate taxes. All of those things are separate. And this, again, just like in regular relationships, is the dating phase of getting into business and getting into real estate versus the partnership phase, which is a long-term commitment. One of the biggest mistakes that I made multiple times was partnering with people before I really knew how they operated. And I've talked about this before. I could go on about it forever because it is so incredibly powerful to understand that if you know somebody in one facet of their life, right? So you've seen them on social media, seem like a great guy, right? Or maybe you know them personally. They're a family friend and they are a great person, but you don't know how they operate in business, or way more importantly, you don't know how they operate when things go wrong. You don't know about their integrity. You don't know about how much they can handle. That is a very, very tough partnership to get into, because then you get into all of that stuff and you learn things you probably wish you would have known sooner, and it makes things a whole lot tougher. But if you have something like a joint venture agreement with somebody, or you just focus on yourself for a little bit first, then you don't have to fall down those traps because you can just sever the ties at any time. I want to give you an accurate number here. I know probably at least 50 different people that have been in partnerships in real estate in my space. I do not know a single one of them that is still connected to their original partner. Zero. Now, does that mean that the world is falling apart? No, not at all. There's plenty of people who just have a partnership and it works out, but then they end the partnership and they move on, and it's not catastrophic. But I also know a lot of them that have been in really bad partnerships where there's been lawsuits involved and people are trying to get money from each other and they've been untangling it for years. And it's all because they made this mistake right here. It's not just that I partner with people too soon, it's that I didn't know who I was actually partnering with. And there's so many different avenues that can come with that. It could be that the person doesn't really know as much as you thought they did. It could be that they're not as good at the business as you thought. It could be that they don't know how to handle things going bad. Whatever it might be, the solution to this one is simple. Date first. That's it. If somebody comes to you and says, hey, I have a really good business idea, let's partner up. Cool. Go for it. But just don't make that partnership official. Make it something where you can test. And by the way, that doesn't mean for a week. That doesn't mean for a month. How long do people date before they get married? Typically years. Now, does that mean that you have to wait years? No, but you want to wait long enough to actually know, how does this person handle things, and is this the right partnership? And I promise, if even one of you guys watching this video can take this to heart and actually do that, you will find at the end of it all that it will put you in a much better position personally to go wherever it is you want to go with your business. So that's the second mistake I made. Just don't rush into partnerships. It's that simple. You'll get there when you get there. Number 3, this one's going to get me riled up a little bit. Trust based on given position. Trusting people based on a given position. Let me explain, because these are all incredibly important, but honestly, if you can leave this video understanding this, it could be the difference between you staying in real estate and not even getting anywhere. Why? Because I've learned something really important in the entrepreneurship space. A lot of people will be given a title or buy themselves a title, okay? And what happens is new people then trust that person as if they have earned the title when they haven't, okay? Let me give you an example. I can give a lot because I've made this mistake many times. Thankfully, I'm still here to tell the story. I've definitely lost money because of it, but at least I'm still here. I paid for an event once, a lot of money, okay? I paid a lot of money to go to a mastermind, and at that mastermind, I spent days being coached and told what to do by leaders at the mastermind. We sat down, they looked at my business, they said, do this, do that, whatever it might be, and I listened to them and took their advice as leaders. That was a few years ago. Now, at this point, a few years later, all of those quote leaders have all gone into mounds of debt, their businesses have fallen apart, and they are nowhere to be seen. True story. All gone. Why? Because those leaders didn't earn the right to become a leader, they just got given it. They didn't actually have anything substantial to back it up. Same thing here with money. When I was getting started in the funding side of real estate, I funded deals for people that were considered leaders based on trust. Now, as I say it, gosh, it sounds stupid, and I hope that you've been watching my channel long enough to know, don't do that, okay? But I did. I was trusting these people based on their status. And so I loaned out over $50,000 on multiple different loans to people that I just said, this person is at the top of their game, they are a leader, and I can trust them with this. Yes, I had contracts, no, they weren't very good. And then what happened? It all crumbled, and that money went deuces. That money is gone probably forever. Now, what is the solution to this? Well, there's a really important thing to understand with this. There's kind of 2 branches, right? One of them is that this stuff can be given. The other one is that it can be earned. What do I mean? Well, I've learned and developed a true appreciation for earned positions and titles. For example, you get appointed to be the CEO of a company because you have a 20-year track record at successfully raising revenue year over year. Or you get invited into a mastermind because your business has repeatedly done over 7 figures in profit, right? These are earned positions. You win a competition and now you get appointed as X, Y, and Z. You have earned those things. Given would be like, hey, person over there, I need help with this thing, so let me give you a title, call you our customer success manager or our client manager or whatever it might be, right? And I just give that title. They didn't do anything to earn it. I just made a decision that I'm gonna give it to them. Well, that's fine, like that's business. But that person, what have they done to earn or deserve more trust? Nothing, right? They haven't done anything different. They were just given that opportunity. And so the solution for this, to not make the same mistake I did, is that when you see anybody, and by the way, me included, like use me as your example. You shouldn't listen to anything I say without being able to back up that I've earned the right to say it and that I have proof behind it. If I tell you I made $1.5 million in real estate, you should be able to look back and see HUD statements and tax returns and testimonials from other people saying, yes, that actually happened. We can verify and back that up. And if you can't do that, then work until you can. Because otherwise somebody will say, oh, I'm the head of this, I'm the lead of this, I've done this. And they will try to give themselves a position based on unsubstantiated claims. Don't fall for it. Move slower and pay attention to the factors that actually matter so that you don't make this mistake. It can lose you so much time and so much money But if you just pay attention and you keep track of that, you'll be just fine. Okay, mistake number 4, buying more rentals. Just like with anything else, as I've talked about before, when I got into real estate, I learned things all mattered about numbers. I wanted to close more deals. I wanted to buy more properties. I wanted to be the guy that could say, I own 10 rental properties, 20 rental properties, whatever it might be, right? And I had this on my vision board when I was getting started. I had it up on my wall. I was gonna buy 10 rental properties, and those 10 rental properties were gonna cash flow $500 a month. And then I was gonna quit my job and float off into the sunset and ride on the rainbow, and it was gonna be magical. What was the mistake? What actually happened? Well, let's draw this out, right? Some crappy house drawings here. So we've got a bunch of houses, and all of these houses that I'm planning on buying, in my head, they're supposed to cash flow and give me some sort of perceived status, I thought, where I was gonna take this and say, oh, I own all of these properties, and each one is doing, you know, plus $500 a month or whatever it might be. Well, what was the reality of that situation? As I started buying these rentals, it was that this one was doing negative $100, and this one was doing negative $300, and then maybe this one was making $400, and then this one was negative $500. I think you get the pattern, right? Not only was it not making me money, but I was stacking these things up for some sort of a status that wasn't gonna get me where I wanted to go. Now, I always wanna clarify when I talk about buying rental properties, if you are buying rental properties so that 30 years from now, they can appreciate and you can pay down the mortgage and make money, good to go. That is a proven strategy, right? Going back to mistake number 1, that is 100% the proven strategy when it comes to real estate. But if you're buying things for cash flow, you're sorely mistaken. And really the biggest mistake that I was making wasn't just focusing on that cash flow, but it was misunderstanding the actual volume that was required. I've talked about this with funding deals, okay? If you're somebody that's in the funding space as I am, if I'm to fund a $10,000 deal and make a 10% return, then that means I make $1,000. But in the same amount of time, I can fund a $1 million deal and make $100,000. Same amount of time, same amount of effort, but I make, what is that, 100 times, right? More money. Same thing with real estate and really anything. So if I'm buying a rental property here, that's a $500,000 house, and maybe it cash flows $250. At the same time, I could go out and find an apartment building. This is my terribly drawn apartment building, right? And that apartment building is $5 million, and that cash flows, you know, 10 grand a month. So now I own one property, so to speak, but because I went bigger, the ratio gets bigger and it gets me closer to my goal faster. Is it easier said than done? Of course. You can't just go buy an apartment building out of nowhere. But the point is, I was buying rental properties simply to try and get those numbers up. I wanted to tell people that I owned 10 units, 20 units, whatever it might be. And it felt cool for like 10 seconds. And then I realized I had to actually figure out how to pay these mortgages, how to manage all of these tenants. And then guess what happened? All the people that I knew that were buying all those properties, they all started falling apart. Like I said, all these people had all these properties, but all of a sudden everything started crumbling down. It was going downhill fast. And I was like, oh, so I wasn't supposed to just go buy a bunch of random rental properties and magically I was gonna float off into the sunset and make money. Got it. Too bad I already own all of these properties now. So the mistake I made was buying these things for the wrong reason. It wasn't that I bought rental properties. That's not the mistake. The mistake is trying to just amplify yourself with things that aren't going to do that for you. If I bought one property that made me $1 million a year, I promise you I would get 10 times more status and recognition and feel a lot better about myself than if I owned 100 properties that were making half that, right? Or let's say more like 1/100th of that, because all of these properties weren't necessarily doing that, and they aren't really gonna do it for anybody if you're buying a bunch of single family properties for cash flow in that sense. So that was the mistake I made, buying rentals for the wrong reasons. Not buying rentals in general, just for the wrong reasons. And then the fifth one was spending money for status. I've got a lot to say about this one. I think will be really helpful for you, because when I was getting started again in business, it's hard to figure out when you're new, like how do you get people to respect you? How do you get people to listen to you? How do you get people to want to hang out with you and want to work with you and actually, you know, help you grow your business? Well, at the time, the best thing I knew how to do was to try and get given positions, try to get given status, or try to buy status. So what does that look like? Well, for me, involved in multiple different real estate groups and communities and things like that, it was, all right, I want to try and get on stage to talk to people so that they can be like, oh, Ryan spoke on this stage. And I want to be considered better. And this is kind of a marketing, not kind of, this is a marketing and pricing tactic that people use is, oh, okay, so you're in this group, but then there's tiers, right? And one of those tiers is things like masterminds. And so what I ended up doing when I started making money is I would spend that money to go to masterminds to try and get the status of being called Ryan Schroep, the mastermind student, right? Or he went to the mastermind. He was a part of the mastermind so that I could then lever that to try and grow my business. What ended up happening? Well, I ended up just basically trusting people based on their given positions at that thing, not getting any status, wasting a ton of money and not learning anything. There is a correction to this that's actually very simple. But the first thing you have to understand is that if you spend $1,000, $5,000 or $100,000, that does not make you a more skilled individual. Taking a $50,000 program and putting it on a payment plan, that does not make you skilled. It kind of makes you an idiot, okay? I've done similar things, so I'm not hating on you, but I'm just letting you know that this was the mistake that I made and so many other people make too. So how do you avoid the mistake? Well, it's really simple. If I had two paths here, and this one down here was the status route that I had taken earlier, then this one right here is just spending money on knowledge. The S&Me 500, as Alex Hormozi says, right? Spending money on my business and education, I do not regret one bit. Not at all. My regret, or the mistake, I don't like to say I have regrets, but the mistake that I made was spending money to try and get other people to look at me differently instead of spending money to try and elevate myself to earn the respect of the people that I wanted to look at me differently. You see the difference? Now I spend way more money than I used to spend when I was spending it on status, but now I'm spending it on how can I learn to make more money? How can I learn to be a better boss? How can I learn to be a better leader? I'll spend money on that stuff any day of the week, right? But what I'm not doing is, hey, I just added this title to my Instagram bio. I just added this to my LinkedIn. And what did I do to get it? I just spent some money, right? What is that ever going to do for you? The answer is not much, but if you avoid spending money for status and instead spend money on your own actual education, your knowledge, your growth, your learning, then you will be in a much better position. It's a mistake that I made that I would have loved to have avoided because I'd be in a better position now. But if I can correct it now, then at least I'm on the right path and you can correct it too. Now, the sixth mistake that I could have made would be letting these 5 mistakes hold me back and get me to quit so that I never actually move forward. But I didn't, and you don't need to either. So if you watch this video right here, you'll see how I took all of this and turned it into a thriving real estate business.